Dr. Kenneth Cherry and Dr. Jimmy Yao, and we're interviewing Dr. Frans Moll from Holland, who we feel is a distinguished international surgeon and worthy of certainly of being part of this history project. Dr. Moll, how did you get interested in vascular surgery? Did you always know that you wanted to be a vascular surgeon?
No, it really happened through my first teacher, Professor Theodorides, which was a Greek immigrant to the Netherlands, and he became the first vascular surgeon in Utrecht. And he inspired me, as probably the same as many physicians. They got inspired by someone. And I changed my mind and switched from gynecology and obstetrics to surgery, and in specific vascular surgery.
Was your father a doctor? Or?
No, my father was an engineer for building ships at the Technical University in Delft, but his brother and a grandfather, so there were a couple of physicians in the family, and some even discovered some things in the eye, like the Moll glands. One of my grandfathers who was active in ophthalmology.
Is going to medical school in the Netherlands different than the United States? Do you commit to medical school when you commit to college? Or is it, do you go to college and then do what you wish?
Yeah, with one specific problem, that we have numerous clauses. So usually a fixed number is set on before, and no more candidates are admitted to the training program. So sometimes if you persist in your wish to study medicine, you have to wait 2 or 3 years before you become elected at a university.
How long was surgery training for you in the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands, for me, it was 6 years, and then 2 years vascular thereafter. But I did that in the US.
Where did you do your vascular in the US?
UCLA. And mid-surgical training, I was sent to Seattle to study the first duplex application for peripheral arterial disease. And so it was a great honor to serve for Dr. Gene Strentness, and it was my first serious trip to the US, and I stayed at Mercer Island and shared an apartment with another resident, and we learned how to use the duplex, and then I had to bring back the duplex to the Netherlands. But unfortunately, it was too difficult, and 2 of the technicians of Gene Strentness came over to Utrecht and to assist us with the first 3 to 6 months. Jeannie Primovic and Ramona. It was great.
You've invented some medical instrumentation and devices. Could you tell us about your, I forget exactly the name, the ring stripper, or the, tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. It was in the area of the beginning of minimal invasive vascular procedures. And I was looking at a way to get the intima core out of the SFA. And in Germany there have been, this operation has been performed many times. It's kind of, as we call it, a kind of German, but also a kind of Southern European procedure. And it went over to the US, and so in the US it was also popular, but you always needed 2 incisions, one at the knee side and one in the groin. And so with the Moll ring cutter, as it became called, we were able to do a remote endarterectomy of the occluded SFA. And while doing so, I was looking for an investment group, and Tom Fogarty turned up, and he said, join our group, but mainly for co-sharing the development of the Enurex stent graft, which became later the Enurex. But meanwhile, I was also able, he was nice enough to assist me with the development of the Moll ring cutter, which is still up today, being used around the world.
Do you still use it some?
Yes.
It's a wonderful little instrument, it really is. And tell us about your venous invention.
Yeah, the valve pathology is always intriguing me, and I designed a valve, and that valve was in a startup in the West Coast, The valve was being developed. It was a percutaneous implantable biological venous valve. And we did also a live case during the Phoenix meeting in the early 2000. The patient was in Jobst Medical Center. It was doing live from the jugular vein all the way to the upper thigh on the left side. Wonderful procedure. But then there came an announcement that the company was changed into another company, 3F, and 3F went into ATM. And then the focus was not longer on the peripheral application, but on the heart valves. And so this system, the 3 cusps with a little leak in the top of the sac, is now being applied in the percutaneous implantable heart valves, being produced by Medtronic ATM and by Edwards. But I'm still interested, and when there's more time in the future, hopefully, when I can resign from my chairmanship from the department, I really would love to continue with medical device research.
Now, you've recently moved from being head of the Division of Vascular Surgery to be head of the Department of Surgery. Is that correct?
Correct.
How has that changed your day-to-day life? Are you much more involved in administrative matters than in the past?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's inevitable, and you get a whole load of brown and yellow envelopes on your desks, and that's not my strongest point. But since I sincerely believe in teamwork, I think a head of a department or a division must be able to collect a group of people with genuine empathy for the division or for the department. And as soon as you make it teamwork, your task is also, it's still a heavy job, but I think you can do it with more pleasure than when you're more autocratic. So that's my philosophy, how to expose a leadership for a department or a division. Not only more the old one chief and the rest are the servants, but teamwork.
And that was the classic European model for a long time, was it not?
For a long time, for 200-300 years, I don't know how long.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of difference between training for vascular surgery in the Netherlands and other European countries as opposed to the United States, or are the training paradigms similar?
Actually, much to my surprise, my Dutch colleagues were very late in recognizing the importance of minimal invasive and endovascular procedures. They left it a little bit to the radiologists, which was not my way of thinking about the future of our profession. I like vascular surgery as a total package of both good medical treatment, secondary prevention, open surgical procedures, which is still the key cornerstone of our profession, but, and not in the last place, also endovascular skills. That makes it difficult to incorporate it in a general surgical training program. You really need to go to kind of monospecialism in the team. So a forward is a forward, and the backs are the backs, and you cannot switch them liberally during the game. And that is now in Europe, in almost every country connected to the European community, except, for example, Belgium and the Netherlands. We still want to have some kind of general surgeon, although he is really cut down, but kind of general surgeon, and on top of that, vascular. So 5-0 appeals a lot to me. But at the same time, it's a challenge how to run your surgical department, because you have to have grand rounds. You have to know each other's profession. So does the general surgeon disappear? What is being left for him or her? Mm-hmm. That has to be figured out in the future. Not an easy job.
And we're certainly facing those same problems in this country. And one of the problems that we talk about at every meeting and people have tried to address is that because of the endovascular, not only the endovascular revolution, but really an endovascular culture, that many of our vascular fellows in this country are not, at least to our understanding, not being adequately trained in open techniques, especially of the aorta and the
Sure.
paravisceral area. Is that a
Sure.
problem in the Netherlands also?
Same problem, same problem. And another problem is that the technical support for your endovascular procedures is becoming more and more expensive. So to get a good balance of cost benefit, you want to use that high-end MR scan 6 or 7 days a week because it's such a huge investment. And by doing so, you have to concentrate your clinics. And like in London, where you have almost 30 vascular units and you go down to 10 or 8. In the Netherlands, it's the same story, and probably in the US as well. You have to work together, otherwise you can't afford these huge investments.
In America, the approval of medical device is very much delayed because of the FDA regulation and all those. So what's your thinking about what we should do about it?
Yeah,
What do you think about the U.S. vascular surgery in the eye or European? Are we getting worse, better?
I have the impression that it is going to switch. In the beginning, the 70s, like I mentioned, 70s, 80s, and then in the early 90s, when the real endovascular wave came, it was great to develop all these devices here in the US. And then the FDA became suspicious. Well, maybe not honest to say suspicious, but anyway, they wanted to put a brake on it. And that gave Europe the opportunity to develop the devices faster. But now Europe is going to take over all the things from the FDA, and the FDA has made and created a kind of shortcut. The promising projects are now, given a chance to apply for a rapid certification, which is very good. So I have the sense that in the European countries we are now watching how this new development that the FDA has created to bridge the gap between the development delay which was currently in the past, and if that works in the US, we hopefully will take that over in Europe.
A lot of companies are moving to South America, Brazil, and all those areas too.
Yeah, and New Zealand and
Russia, I think.
Yeah, and the Baltic countries, exactly.
Yeah, we had at a previous interview, Dr. Dietrich had talked about that quite a bit, and he felt that it takes 7 times as long to get a new device to the patient in this country as it does in the European countries. Is that your impression also?
I had that impression up till about 2 years ago, and I'm always believing in the good side of the things, and I think that when you are working very transparent and following the safety regulations and all the rules, it must be able to get it being approved in the same speed as it is in Europe. And I see a shift now. It's about 7 times, and in the very near future, Europe will be equal to the US, and we have to both together go down. Otherwise, all the development of the new products will go to countries outside Europe or America,
US,
or the other way around.
Now, we have a lot of women in medical school now.
Yeah.
Is that happening in Europe?
Yes.
And, how you handle as a chairman for the women in surgery? You do anything special for them, for their marriage, pregnancy, day off, and so on and so on?
Yeah, that is an extremely difficult problem to address. I confess that. It's not easy. The whole social environment is being changed, because part-time work is now becoming more and more popular in certain levels of our society. And surgery doing part-time was impossible. It was not to be discussed. You work 7 days a week, and specifically for your patients, you have to be there wherever you are on the whole world. And nowadays, they want to formalize that during your procedure, and you have to get your son from school or from swimming lessons, and you are still in the middle of a colon resection, you call your colleague and say, well, I dissected up to here, the mid-colon, and you take it over, this has to be done, and I have to go to the school and get my my son from whatever. And that is a total change in mentality, total change. And if you get more and more women into the profession, you have to keep the standard very high, because it's not that I think that they are bringing, you know, the appreciation from the people down in the profession, but if a profession turns into a female profession, then everything is going to change. Also the fee. That is proven by many studies. We appointed a female professor in medical education at the University of Utrecht, and she gave her inaugural lecture, and she was pointing at this, being a female herself, and showing that by feminization of the profession itself is going to change. So you need, let's say, 50% women, 50% men. But in the University of Utrecht, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, many universities in Holland, we have 8 on a population of 17 million. Just like in Sweden, Norway, Great Britain, it's about 75 to 80%. For 5 years in a row, we had 80% female students coming into our university, and only 20% of the first years were male students. So that's surprising.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And in surgery, it's now about, it's a nice balance in surgery. It's about 40-50% women and 50 to 60% men.
We have an 80-hour work week in the United States for training.
You're blessed.
What do you have in the Netherlands? We don't always feel it's a blessing, but everything is relative.
Yeah.
And they're not going to show this back in the Netherlands. You'll be safe. No. What is your work week for residents in the Netherlands?
It may not exceed 48 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
So we try to get them, and they really are opposing also against the 48 hours, because they do not want to miss an important operation, and they want to stay. But they have then to stay voluntarily without being appointed to stay, and that is a strange situation. On the other hand, when I explained this, when I did a visiting professorship at Harvard, they asked me about labor times also. And I gave an example. A great guy, in his free time, he is a top 10 rower, in a good person. He did an excellent PhD work. He's an MD-PhD. He's training in surgery, and he came to me and he said, "I want to enjoy and seeing our little son growing up. So what do you think about prolonging my surgical training and working only 4 days a week?" I said, "Yes, Wouter, but if you work 4 days a week and your son has a performance at school or a concert or whatsoever, and that's in the 4 days that you work, you cannot attend it. So why not work 3 days a week? Then you can see your child growing up more." And he said, "Are you serious, Professor Moll?" I said, "Yeah, actually, why not stop the training and then come back later when your son is grown up?" "Oh, you are kidding." And that's the mentality. Now, what is the result of this negotiation? He is now prolonging his training from 6 years to 8 years. He is working 4 days a week, and the 5th day is for his family or his child or whatsoever.
So who does his work on the 5th day?
His colleagues. And the colleagues have seen this, and when there is difficulty in getting a job afterwards, they say, why not taking a little bit less money in my training and also prolong and give 20% of my salary in return of 1 day. And so you have also 20% less being on call.
When you say that they've dissected out the left colon up to a certain level and then they call in their colleague,
Yes.
does their colleague always come in, or is the attending surgeon left without help sometimes in these situations?
No, the schedule has to be that the coming in colleague is first doing, according to JCI, because in Utrecht we are JCI approved, doing a briefing. Then the, how do you call it, timeout. Then
Time out in surgery.
timeout. This is done, that is done. Check, check, check. Identification, the right patient, the right surgeon. Check, check, check. Okay, go ahead.
A little bit of a change of topic. Demographics in the Netherlands are changing, at least as we read it in the paper. Has that had a big impact on practice at the university or vascular surgery practice, or is it not affected vascular surgery per se?
I think it's not affected vascular surgery per se, but the private practice and the practices at the state universities, the salaries are going closer to each other.
No, the ISCVS
Yep.
and SBS been merged together.
Yes.
So we lost some sort of international exchange through the ISCVS. What's your take on that? You think it's a bad thing or good thing?
Yeah, but on the other hand, the meetings were always back to back. And I am a very strong believer in international exchange of knowledge and skills. So I do hope that we still are able to invite people from other countries, other parts of the world, to give lectures, to listen to each other's problems and technologies that have been developed and so on. So I do not say per se that this is a bad situation, because you still maintain your view abroad.
Well, SBS have an international committee now, and they are offering international membership.
Yep.
They are offering international scholarship program.
Yes.
Are you favor
Yes.
on that? And
Yes.
would you
Yes.
recommend some of your younger guys to
Yes.
apply for it?
Yes. Yes. At the moment I have 4 young medical doctors working here in the US, and I kept that tradition very high for the last 15 years. And at this very moment we have an MD PhD at Yale, an MD at Harvard, at Gib Upchurch in Charlottesville, and there's one guy up in Minnesota. And I'm a strong believer. We got people from the US coming in, but also from Japan and from South Africa.
Your man in Charlottesville is doing very well, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes, he's
Thanks.
doing very well.
yep. Jip Tolenaar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well thought of and
Yep.
an up-and-coming young man.
And this is seeding, you know. This is good for the world. I mean, it's good for the profession, and it's good for the mankind, to understand each other.
When you look at your career to date,
Yep.
what are you proudest of?
Being trainer of young doctors. That's the number one.
Yeah.
And international contacts and, respect for each other. That's my...
But internet technology is here.
Yes.
You think we can utilize the technology for all the podcasts and all sort of conference can be
Yeah,
together so
I know.
so we can develop a global vascular surgery training
True,
program.
true.
What's your thought on that?
But it can never replace 100%. You need to see each other.
Yeah.
And even if you have FaceTime and Skype combined with smell or whatever, that you can see who is behind the screen, it cannot replace physical.
By person-to-person contact.
Yes. So we need meetings, maybe not that many as we are organizing at the moment, but we need before the summer break 2 or 3 times to see each other, and after the summer break 1 or 2 times, something like that. And sometimes you can a year, you can skip 1 year, but the next year you have to see each other at meetings. That's it. That's a prerequisite. But meanwhile, training, and specifically if traveling is more expensive or whatsoever, training is wonderful. By internet, I mean. Yeah.
One of the problems in U.S. is the medical legal problem for foreign student scrub in.
Same in Holland.
You cannot do all those things.
No.
That has been a really disadvantage for us to work with the visitors.
It's not only scrubbing in, and when you're young, you think that the most important part is when you go to Chicago, your place, to scrub in and to work. But on the other hand, if you attend the procedures and you read about it and you look at the indications and the post-operative care, you can mature also in surgery and become a very good physician, and then work on your license and be patient and watch the procedures and learn for 2 or 3 years and ultimately get your license. It is not necessary immediately to scrub in my view.
With the advent of the common currency in Europe, has that in the union of the countries, has that had an effect on medical licensure or your ability to practice in other countries? Or
in Europe, yes.
Yes.
Yes, we strongly are working in, once you pass your language exam, the medical knowledge and skills must be equal. And the only barrier you have to take is that you can communicate with your patients in their language and not your own language.
So does that mean that if someone from the Netherlands spoke French very well, that they could then practice in France, or do they have to do retrain in France or not?
France is always a little bit different than the rest of Europe.
Well, let's pick another country then.
But
Sweden or
theoretically,
Germany?
it's true.
Yeah.
The French cannot refuse my application, but the French at the moment are still very French, and Sweden is completely different.
Okay.
UK, Germany, Italy.
So you can go. So your trainees could go to Italy
Yep.
and practice without a problem.
Yep.
Is that a change, or has that been that way for a long time?
It's a complete change. And we're still working on it because several legal departments of the different countries haven't sorted it out completely. The doctors wanted to go faster than the government sometimes is going to, but there is an exchange, yes.
Fascinating.
What do you think we should improve the international exchange? What you have any idea?
Yeah, yes. And it's good because if you encourage the international exchange, and you're not only doing this with medicine, but medicine should do it as well, then the better you understand each other, I think it sounds a little bit old or arrived, but the better world you can create. I mean, I'm not a holy person, but if you encourage this kind of exchange and appreciations for each other's cultures and work, I mean, yeah, then you don't grab immediately and you don't immediately start a war because you know these other people better.
Yeah.
I noticed, Holland has a very high standard a lot of articles in Journal of Vascular Surgery
Sure.
are from your country.
I love it. Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that you guys have a very high standard.
Well, we start very early in the medical training, and we learn how to read an article, and to train the students about statistics, about the methodology, and see whether the conclusions in the articles are being justified or when they are just loose sand. And that has its influence, and it has its payoff after 10 years. We are doing that. We started it in our medical training program about 10, 15 years ago at all the 8 different universities in our country.
Is the Journal of Vascular Surgery a target journal for when your vascular surgeons write an article? Is that one of the journals they would like to get it published
Yep.
in? Or?
The Journal of Vascular Surgery and the European Journal of Vascular Endovascular Surgery, those two are the target vessels. And when you have a beautiful designed study, maybe randomized, double-blind, etc., then you target at the New England, the Lancet. Circulation is a target as well, but then it's usually a little bit more basic science or basic science applied to translational research.
Venous surgery is getting more and more popular in
Venous?
For
venous surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that happen in Europe?
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
country?
sure. Yeah, and venous reconstructions also, eh? And several years ago you said, well, madam, the operation is too cumbersome and too high morbidity to make a reconstruction of your iliac veins or all kind of that stuff. And nowadays you see several clinics around Europe where they start doing these kind of procedures.
With your added administrative responsibilities, how often are you able to operate now?
1.5 days a week, and sometimes not the full day, that you step in for 1 or 2 procedures where you have a long experience, and then you step out. But that's unusual in my colleagues who have the same position. They sometimes abandon they step out of surgery. I would not survive. If that was not accepted by the chief of the hospital, I would give my job back.
What type of operations do you continue to do mostly?
Yeah, the open thoracoabdominals, Crawford 4, redos abdominally, and the re-carotids and the glomus tumors.
I'm kind of curious. We have the 05 program.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Well,
What's your opinion on it?
I'm happy that one of my MD PhDs decided to stay in the US. His name is Felix Schlesser. He was a brilliant medical student, and he applied for a training program in Holland. He was accepted in the surgical training program, but he said, Dr. Moll, I would like to stay in New Hampshire. I would like to stay at Yale. They offer me a 5-0 program. So I visit him almost every year, and we still have 4 or 5 times a year email contact. And so I'm very impressed by his training schedule.
Is most of the training, and perhaps I didn't understand when you spoke of it earlier, is most of the training in the Netherlands for vascular surgeons 0+5 or 5+2, or is it?
It's actually 4+2,
Okay.
which is not enough. So we had 6+2 as I was being trained, and now we have 4+2. But then you get a kind of B vascular surgeon, and you want to have an A vascular surgeon. So you need more years. And from the European community, there are some regulations and saying they encourage the different countries to make a 1 and 5 or 0 and 5. And we probably have to go in not too long of a time at 1 year general, in general training, and then 5 years of surgery. 0-5 might still be a little bit tricky because you general physical examination, and not only trust your MR or your CT or very highly sophisticated PET scan, but also simply a full year of, you know what I mean. Yeah.
You use simulator for training your.
Yeah, but we do that because the stuff is very expensive, so we combine it by different universities. So we give the residents a certain day in 1 day in 2 months or something, or 1 day a month, and they go to one of the universities where they cluster the simulators together, and then they work that together.
Is there a great deal of cooperation between the 8 different universities?
Yeah. Yeah.
Departments of surgery?
Yeah, and that is typical Dutch and typical Nordic, because in the Nordic countries it is the same. As soon as you go more south, everybody can start at university, and everybody is more working by himself than, combine the whole country. That is the difference.
You spent some time in America. What's your feeling about the training here?
Yeah, actually, I was so happy that I wanted to stay here, but my wife said that you are not running away for your family, you are not divorced. Why shouldn't we go back? Because I followed you, and now you have to follow me, because they are offering you a job in the Netherlands, and my father and mother are living in the Netherlands, and so I changed and went back to Holland, and then decided to visit the US at least 2 or 3 times a year.
You were at UCLA before.
Yep.
Who was the chief there at the time?
Westmore
Westmore.
and Herb McLeather,
Yeah.
and then the sub-boss was Danny Baker, and Wiley Barker Jr. was still coming to every grand round. That was fun.
You know, we recently interviewed Wiley Barker.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
He is 94,
Yeah.
96.
Yeah.
But he's still very sharp.
Yeah, I sent you a nice picture of him
Yeah.
when we were there at the Pacific Coast Highway. Yeah, and I shared a room like 3 meters by 4 meters.
A European hotel room.
Exactly. Yeah, Japanese would be not even smaller, but this was a European hotel
not
room.
in Tokyo.
Not in Tokyo, with Sam Ahn and Danny Baker and Bill Quinones.
Yeah.
And so the 4 of us were sitting very tight together, but we produced quite a number of.
I know from Gene Stranners,
Yeah.
he had a wonderful time working with you together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes. Gene was very special.
yeah, it's
Extremely.
just too bad we lost him.
Yeah, that's really.
We never
good.
get chance to. He would be the one that I love to interview.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you play tennis with him or anything?
Yes, yes, yes. And he invited us also at his private, his home, and there was a beautiful house there in the little bit rural area, and yeah, it was nice. Nice family also.
Yeah.
You are still working a lot on non-invasive area?
Not so much. I have
Not
to
so much.
confess that I still send my residents to training for non-invasive, but a lot has been replaced by dynamic CT, which is of great interest. MR technology improved so much. I mean, also the carotid plaque studies about
Yeah.
vulnerable plaques, etc. As soon as we validate what we see at MR,
Yeah, that would make a difference.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And at the moment, the CT is a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, up to 1 minute. The MR is a little bit longer. But as soon as you can use these machines, this is what I said a couple of minutes before, these tools are so expensive, but if you use them for a community, let's say 1.5, 2.5 million people, and then run these machines starting at 7 in the morning up to 7 in the evening, and then 6 days a week, you get a nice outcome financially also.
Do you have young proteges, men or women, that you're teaching to do the complex aortic work and complex branch work that you do so that when you do retire, there'll be someone to
Yep.
carry that condition on and improve on it.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up because at the moment we are still having vascular surgery. But in the near future, we will have subspecialties within vascular surgery, and you already can see it. It's surprising. So I try to get my group still together, but inevitable, you have people who are smarter with ultra-thin wires and other colleagues who, do not feel that attraction to this part of the vascular field and focus more on the general surgical vascular procedures. And so it's the obligation to train and teach your colleagues as much as you can, but you have to sort some out who are more talented than the others. That's a pity, but that's how it goes.
In your operating room, what percentage of cases are endovascular?
I think it's going up to 50%. Yeah, because it's not completely endovascular. Sometimes you do hybrid procedures. I'm still not a big believer in PTA of the common femoral artery and the deep profunda of the profunda or the deep femoral. So you do that surgically.
Yeah.
But then what is distally, usually we did the bypass, but nowadays, there was a remote endarterectomy in the midsection, but then ultimately you do more and more endovascularly. And that's also with abdominal procedures.
I'm sure you have a big uptick in the use of endovascular grafting for thoracic aortic problems.
Sure. But if you look closely to the number of procedures in a community, I'm surprised that we do not cluster more of these thoracic procedures. Because I think that you must do between 20 and 50 procedures in the thorax endovascularly to get a sort of routine, not only for the physician, but also for the people around the physician who are supporting the doctor. And spinal taps and certain anesthesiology techniques should also be in the armamentary of the anesthesiologist and the scrub nurse.
Is there much vascular trauma in your university practice? Not just yours, but
Yeah, we have the largest trauma unit in Holland because if you fold the map of Holland 2 times, Utrecht is right in the middle. So there's a lot of trauma focused and brought to Utrecht, but not that many. In the past, we had more stab wounds. Now we shoot each other.
Well, we would tell you that's a sign of progress in this country.
Come to Chicago,
Yeah.
and you would have plenty.
No, but vascular trauma, I think thoracic rupture, the most common one, is about in our clinic 5-7 times a year.
Or when someone presents to your hospital with a ruptured abdominal aortic
Yep.
aneurysm, are most of those taken care of endovascularly or open in this day and age?
By far endovascular. We were lucky to get that logistically fixed about 2 to 3 years ago.
Will you do endovascular repair if the patient's unstable also?
Yes.
And do you use a thoracic balloon to control bleeding, or how do you?
Not that often as being advocated by some other centers. It's usually it's the old Crawford credo, getting in as fast as possible and getting out as fast as possible. But that was with open surgery.
Mhm.
And endovascularly, actually, it's the same.
Yeah.
What are your advice for young surgeons? The young guy coming on,
Continue your follow your heart. If you want to become that kind of a doctor, don't be misled by media or by finance or being jobless. I don't believe in being jobless. Of course, I don't close my eyes because there are a lot of physicians without a job. But if you are very focused on your profession, you should do that. And don't listen to people who want to tell you you should change your profession because in that profession you can make more money, or you should do it a little differently because that pathology is going to disappear. Go for it. That's my...
Now you are in charge of vascular and general surgery.
Sure.
What's your trick on time management?
At the moment, I have to confess that I do not treat patients in general surgery. For the last 10 years, I do only vascular when I do my practice. Administrative work is including also administration for GI oncology, pediatric surgery, trauma surgery, and so on. But my personal doctor practice is focused on vascular.
You had mentioned earlier doing glomus tumors.
Yes.
In the Netherlands, are all of those referred to you, or can that be done at any of the 8 universities?
Two or three institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many would you see in an average year, would you say?
Between 15 and...
Quite a practice.
Yeah, it's surprising.
Are you embolizing all of them?
No. I quit that completely. I did that in the past, and now the surgical technique is in such a way that goes straight forward. Yeah.
What sort of techniques do you use for that?
Trying to get the feeders from above, and then work your way around, and then save the very last part for the bifurcation. And I like to do it with an EEG control because sometimes you have to clamp the carotid to be radical in the resection and take a very slim part of the wall with your tumor and take that out and close the carotid either primarily or with a patch.
Yeah.
But then you have to occlude the carotid bifurcation for, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes. And sometimes when it's really complicated and you want to work with the patch, because the patch is actually in a kind of saddle configuration, you need maybe an occlusion of 12 minutes or something like that. Well, fortunately enough, I have not needed a shunt, but to be a trainer for people who have to learn that, I would like to be prepared on other. Yeah.
Why did you give up on the embolization? Did it help decrease blood loss, or did you find that you have the same blood loss
Yes.
with or without it?
Yeah, it was so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And it was so cumbersome to do it in advance, and then a little bit more, and then.
Do you ever find that there are feeders coming from posteriorly?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And stay on it,
Yeah.
and also remove the lymph nodes, because in 5% malignancy can occur. So remove the lymph nodes for complete pathological scope. And then when you tell the patient the result of the examination, you have included that as well. Yep.
Tell us about your family.
Yep. My wife and I met each other when we worked in the St. Antonius Hospital, when I was a resident there. And she came from the south of the Netherlands and working as a nurse. And then she wanted to go an operating nurse, and we decided that she was being trained in another hospital because we didn't like to work in the same hospital. And she's still active as an operating nurse, but in a private clinic for aesthetic surgery. So I called her today and I said, "What was your program?" Oh, she said, only noses. We had 5 noses today, but it was okay. She can work along with these aesthetic surgeons quite well. And together we have 3 children, a boy and 2 girls.
Any surgeons?
No.
What are your hobbies? Anything special?
I like history, and the rest of it is the usual sports. A bit of tennis. I'm still a member of a golf club because that's so close by, but I'm not doing this more than 2 times a year. But my wife said, keep on being a member, because once you have more time, I said, okay, I pay my fee again, because you never know when more time is coming. That's a little bit.
What area of history? European history, Dutch history?
European and Dutch, but also very much interested in. There's a kind of direction in history where they combine economy and history together, also in the past. Why are people moving? Why? And that kind of history I'm very much interested in.
Well, thank you for coming for the interview.
Pleasure. And I hope that the Historic Society will continue.
Thank you so much.
And that we can send it out to the younger generation that's
True.
looking into history. You can learn a lot that you can use for the future.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.